about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free. Let's go, let's be
Good evening, everyone. It's John here from Tutor to You. Do you notice what I do there? What I did? I snuck in a quick advert for our exam revision workshops starting next week. So if you've been enjoying these sessions over the last few weeks and months, you can come and see us live. We will be live in cinemas somewhere near you starting from next week. So this time next week, we'll have already done a couple in London. Hope you can join us. It'd be lovely to see you, lovely to see your real faces and get some real genuine answers, because we've seen some wonderful ones digitally over the last few weeks and months. Massive welcome to you. Good evening to you. Hope you're enjoying your evening, and we're glad to see so many people joining us live. We're into large numbers tonight. If you are with us live and would like to participate, we would love to see your answers as we go through. Please use the chat window. If you're joining us on replay, of course, course, you can pause the video as you go along, but make sure you participate and concentrate on the questions. We're in our third of our little series here of topics that we know are going to be covered in the exams because we were told so as part of the advanced information sheets that we were given by the awarding bodies. So we're talking about international trade tonight, and of course I'm joined by two of our very bestest presenters. We've got Jeff on the right hand side of the screen and Kathy in the middle. Good evening both.
Hello.
Hi everybody.
Right, okay, I think we might be ready to start. Shall I hand it over to you guys?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
make a
it's
start.
over to Jeff, isn't it, to start with?
Here we go.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to start with 5 multiple choice questions. It's fantastic if you can type your answer into the chat window. Have a go at these questions. I will give a shout out to people I spot get the right answer as we go through. First question. In 1817, I was there, by the way, I'm that old. David Ricardo. You know. In 1817, David Ricardo developed the classical theory of comparative advantage. The theory of comparative advantage suggests that countries should do what? Take a moment, please, to have a go at our first multiple choice question. Diversify as much as possible. Only trade if each country has an absolute advantage in at least one product. Only trade if the opportunity cost of production differ between countries. Or they should only trade, they should seek to become self-sufficient before trading. Range of answers coming through. Alfie's gone for C. Shamika's gone for C. Ismail's gone for C. Some regulars appearing on our live stream, our fantastic loyal band of economists. A couple of people gone for A, which is quite interesting. Come back to that in a second. The consensus seems to be A, although AY says, come on guys, it's obviously A. Most people are saying it's C actually. Let's have a look at the answer, John. The answer is C. When it comes to comparative advantage, the key point, it's all about relative opportunity costs. If you can find a relative cost difference, then countries have the potential to specialize and trade. A is interesting. Clearly, diversification is useful, particularly if you want to avoid primary product dependency. But C is the right answer to the first question. Let's move on to question number 2. Now, this is interesting. Read the question carefully. Have a go at this one, please. Which argument is an importer most likely to use to gain the support of consumers for free trade? Take a moment to have a go, please, at question number 2. If you're watching on the replay, just press the pause button, have a think about the answer, and then we'll go through it in a second or two. Ellie thinks C on this one. Will thinks C. What other ones coming through? I'll give a shout out to answers as they come through. Alfie's gone for D this time. Hassan's gone for D. Seb says C. Tom Grogan says C as well. Let's have a look at the answer. The answer is indeed C. Now, this is a great point for revision. The importer would be trying to persuade consumers that free trade is good. Of course, if imports increase competition, that should lower prices for consumers. So a key point here is to link your macro with your micro. Trade liberalization can also make markets more contestable. If you think about, for example, Bank Santander in the banking sector, or Primark, an Irish company in the sort of retail clothing industry. Contestability brings prices down and therefore would increase consumer surplus and real incomes. Somebody's saying they got D, but it was C. They were so close. You were literally just one letter away.
That's how it works, isn't it?
Multiple choice. Country A can make, calculation question. Country A can make 40,000 cars or 8 million pencils, while country B can make 18,000 cars or 6 million pencils in 1 week. It's a lot of pencils, by the way, in a week. Which of the following statements is true? Yeah, somebody's saying if I'm 1 away, do we get half marks? No.
Yeah.
So if you get the answer C, sadly not. You should do, but you're so close. You're literally within a centimetre of the right answer. What do we think on this one? This is a comparative absolute advantage question. It's actually a 2021 paper question from another board. So let's have a look. What do we think? Seb has gone for D. Country B should focus on making pencils. Sammy says B. And we can have a few answers coming through. You've got to work out the relative advantage here. Country A, of course, can make more of both. Which is country B relatively best at? Sochi says D. Neela says D, and so too does Sam and Jade. Tom says defo not B, lad. And Tom, you're right. Let's have a look at the answer. The answer is indeed D. Now, crucial point here is that country B is not as good as country A, 18,000 compared with 40,000 and 6 compared with 8. But actually, country B is closest in relative terms. It's 3/4 as good at making pencils. It's less than half as good at making cars. So in theory, country B should specialise in making pencils. Kathy, I quite like these questions, don't you? They're quite good, aren't they, these ones?
It's really weird though. I don't know if you find the same, Jeff. My students, I've got some that immediately get the numbers for this and others that really struggle. So I think one of the key things to realize here is if you can look at the relative absolute advantage, then the country with the biggest absolute advantage is going to have the comparative advantage. So as you were saying, the least disadvantage here is with pencils. Therefore, country B is going to have the comparative advantage in making pencils. So this is one that you can do without actually really having to wrestle with the numbers too much, as long as you know that fact.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I just think any questions about pencils in revision, really good for sharpening up knowledge.
Indeed, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Jeff says, is it Jeff with a G or Jeff with a J? The answer is either's fine. Either's fine. Question number 4 coming up. Oh, another good question. 1990 to 2011, Africa's intra-regional trade share doubled from a low 6% to 12%. Okay, this is an interesting question. What are the main benefits of intra-regional trade? What do they include? I'll explain to you in a few minutes what intra-regional trade means. What do we reckon for question 4? Africa's intra-regional trade share doubled from 6% to 12%. What are some of the benefits of that increase in intra-regional trade? I'll give a shout out to people as answers come through. Eliza says B. Mariam says B. Who is coming? Cormac says B. The consensus does seem to be B. Let's just double check with the answer. Yes, it is. Low transport costs and the reciprocated trade. Intra-regional trade, of course, is countries within Africa trading with each other. And Africa's intra-regional trade is the lowest of any continent in the world. The free trade agreement is designed to try and enhance intra-regional trade and increase the flow of goods and services across borders. Question 5, last question. What may increase the benefits a country gains from international trade? Take a moment, please, to have a go at question 5. Post an answer in chat if you're confident. We'll call out some answers as they come through. What might increase the benefits a country gains from international trade? In other words, what amplifies those gains? A few answers coming through already. Mariam says A. Marie says A. KS says A. And Will says A. I think most people seem to think it's A. And just double check. These are all past paper questions, of course. Yes, indeed, a reduction in transportation costs. So in other words, that reduces the cost of transportation. It reduces some of the friction costs of moving goods and services across the world. In this case, it could be a fall in oil prices. That's a short-term thing. Or it could be long-term things like globalization, containerization, and technological change. If you got 5 out of 5, absolutely amazing, because these are all past paper questions. And Kathy, do you want to have a go at the next one?
Yeah, of course. They're really good. I did this whole set of questions with my students earlier on today, and there's multiple choice, just perfect for really testing whether you know some key bits of knowledge. As indeed is this. So if you're a regular viewer, you will know that I frequently failed to spot the clock. And it was, in fact, only when I did this with my students, I realized this is a timed activity, despite the title on the slide. So you've got 30 seconds to fill in the 2 phrases that are covered up on this table. So can you work out what A is? This table is all about different stages of economic integration. So what is the stage beyond monetary union? And running along the top, what is missing under B? So John, would you like to start the clock? So halfway and some answers coming in. So 5 seconds left. So quickly add your answers to the chat. And let's have a look. So I know from experience I've got quite a big lag here. So I can see some people saying for A, this is economic union. And we've got people saying common currency or a shared currency, the same currency. John, would you like to reveal answer A? So those of you that had economic union, that's absolutely right. Super well done. So the stage of economic integration beyond monetary union. So this would add in a common economic policy, for example, a common fiscal policy, perhaps the same tax rates. Let's have a look at B as well, John, please. And those of you that answered this, almost everybody was right. A common currency. So an example of this, of course, would be the euro. So a super important table, this one. You really are expected to know the different stages of integration and the characteristics of each. So you're going to need this for some questions later on. And you need this in order to do well in your exam. Jeff, I can tell you agree from the
Well, yeah. So, for example,
agreeing sound.
we're looking at Denmark today in my lessons, and Denmark is inside the single market, but outside the monetary union. So they've got their fixed exchange rate against the euro. And Norway, of course, is outside the European Union, but inside the EU single market. And don't just expect questions on the European Union. They could be giving you a question about monetary union in Asian economies, African economies. This is a really key table to revise.
Yes,
it's great.
Really, really key. And it's so important as well, isn't it, to have a really accurate real world knowledge. So not to think, for instance, that all the countries in the EU are in the Eurozone. They're not. So the majority, a majority of them are, but there's quite a lot. Another common mistake my students make is to think that Switzerland is in the EU, for instance, and in the Euro. So such an important table. Now, Jeff, I prepped the next activity thinking it was mine, but I actually believe it's yours.
Well, I'll do it. By the way, that last activity, the 30-second challenge, Kathy, I would have been more generous. I would have given you half a minute to do that. 30 seconds. Let's look at the next question. Now, this is a great little activity. If anybody gets all 5 right, serious respect from yours truly. So here we go. This is a matching exercise. What we've done, we've got 5 letters, A, B, C, D, and E, obviously pinpointed around the world. And these are 5 examples of common markets, single markets, and or free trade agreements. Can you match them up? How many are we giving some time on this, John, or are we just going to allow people to post in the chat? So
yeah, there's Kathy would be pleased to know there's no clock on this one. So we'll give people a few moments to have a go at this one. Yeah.
Okay. So as answers coming already. So I'll try and give a shout out. Okay. So Seb McCormack's gone 1E, 4A, C5, 2B, 3D. Asma says E is ASEAN. Some good answers coming through here. Brandon says E is Cambodia. Pretty close, I think. Although it's the region, it's not just the country. Rizzy has gone for 1E, 2B, 3D, 4A, 5C. I think we could all get, okay. D should be relatively straightforward, shouldn't it? Northern European aspects. A couple more. Tom Grogan says E is ASEAN and D equals EU, and A is the USMACA. Oh, well, thank you for putting those answers in. Let's go through the answers. Here they come. So we have got EFTA. Oh, actually, there we go. There's the matching. We'll give you the details in a second. So A is USMCA, B is CARICOM, 3 EFTA. So D is EFTA. C is, well, we're pronouncing. I'm going to go for WEMU.
Yeah.
Sounds like the sort of thing you order from Deliveroo on a Friday night. I'll now combine the two with some fries. And one very important, Asia. E is Asia. I think on the next slide, actually, just nicely, neatly. There we go. Fantastic. By the way, you can take a screenshot, or you'll be able to download the PowerPoint at the end of this presentation. We'll always make it available for free download if you haven't seen any of these tables or charts before. So ASEAN, very, very important. Single market, who's Thailand, Singapore, lots of countries of different levels of development. CARICOM, of course, is Caribbean Community. EFTA, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein. USMCA used to be NAFTA. It's the new name for the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement. I'm very, very interested in the West African Economic and Monetary Union. So a cluster of countries in West Africa, including Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, have created a monetary union. And don't necessarily assume you're going to get questions on the European Union the whole time. Oftentimes they give you regions, clusters of countries. You can still write about the principles involved in the arguments for and against, but just apply it to another country. Brilliant. Okay, Kathy, you're going to take the next exercise, I think. Oh, our favourite.
It is indeed the bubble quiz. It is my absolute favourite. So if you're a regular, again, you will know how this works. If you are new, this is slightly different to the multiple choice. So with the multiple choice at the start, there's only one correct answer. With the bubble quiz, any number could be correct. So perhaps none of them are, perhaps all of them are, or any number in between. So, John, could we have the first question then? So this is all about the World Trade Organization. So again, something you are expected to know. So not in detail what the World Trade Organization does, but broad outlines of what it is they are responsible for. So which of these four are correct? Answers on the chat. So which letters do you think are correct here? Is it A, monitoring international trade policies of its members? Is it B, handling international trade disputes for its members? C, to support social and economic development? Or is it D, providing a forum for international trade negotiations? So I can see coming in on the chat, I can see B and C, I can see A, B, and D. The chat, there's so many people. The chat is going so fast. Charlie thinks it's a trick question, and all of them are right. Several people think all are right, in fact. Okay, John, would you like to share the answers with us? Well, they're not all right. Monitoring international trade policies of its members. A is correct. So I always think the World Trade Organization, it's about trying to make trade freer. So trying to increase the amount of free trade we've got. So handling trade disputes for its members. And D, providing this forum for international trade negotiations. So A, B, and D are the correct answers here. Okay, John, can we have the next one then? So a customs union. Now, this is where you've got to think back to that all-important table we had earlier as well, just to remind yourself what are the characteristics of a customs union. So again, same thing. How many answers here are correct? Is it protection of infant industries? Is it an increase in trade amongst its members? Is it that countries share a common currency? Or is it increased competition amongst members may lead to innovation and greater efficiency? So I've got B and D, B and C, C, B and D. Lots of people thinking B and D. Just B, B and D. Okay, John, Would you give us the correct answers? So those of you that thought it was B and D are absolutely right. So customs union can be characterized by these two things. So it isn't that they share a common currency. If you remember, if you look back at a later point at the slide, that table we had earlier, you need more integration to be using a common currency. And it's not very likely that this will be protecting your infant industries either. You would probably, if you're going to use a tariff for that, want a tariff around your own country. And of course, with the customs union, you can't do that. And there is a common external tariff. So I believe we've got another one coming up. John, please. Now, this is where I'm going to get into trouble because I researched the pronunciation of all these free trade areas and not one of these countries. So Nigeria has closed part of a border with, Jeff, is this Benin? How do I
get
pronounce
Benin.
that?
Yeah, Benin.
Yeah. To reduce rice smuggling. So which one of the following measures would benefit the economy by reducing competition from abroad? So which one of the following measures would benefit the economy by reducing competition from abroad? Be careful. Really important, as always, to read the question. We're looking for something that would reduce competition from abroad. So some people are saying it's none. Someone's saying, I said it first. People obviously are realizing I'm not as good as Jeff at multitasking and watching the chat at the same time as I am talking.
I think actually John is writing down the names of the great
Is
contributors.
he? All right. So we can
I
rely
am.
on
I
John.
am, yes. I am.
John can multitask as well. Watch the chat. Oh, John's just given us
So, I thought that's what you meant, Kathy.
Oh, sorry, that's all right. That's all right. I can cope with the unexpected. So the correct answer here is C. Now, interestingly, lots of my students got this one wrong, in fact. So a depreciation of domestic currency, that's going to reduce competition from abroad because that makes your imports more expensive in domestic currency. And in my ear, I can hear Jeff agreeing with me, so that's always good. Now, lots of my students put B, interestingly enough. But if you remove a subsidy to domestic producers, that's going to make what they produce more expensive. And that isn't going to help reduce competition from abroad. So I believe, have we got one more of these, John? Yes, we have. So this is again another one in a way where you've got to think back to that all important table. So which of the following are advantages to a member of a monetary union? Again, which ones of these are correct answers? Remember, we're asking about a monetary union and which are advantages. So the chat's coming in with answers really quickly. I can see A, C, and D. Lots of people saying A, C, and D. Some people just making my life more difficult by putting them in a different order, but I think they're all saying the same thing. Someone said just D. So almost complete agreement on A, C, and D. So John, are they right? Indeed, they are. So these are clear advantages to a monetary union. Now, B is wrong, of course, because you would need to be an economic union, so even more integrated before you might have these common tax rates. Okay, so I believe it's over to Jeff now for our next activity.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, my last activity is called On Balance. We love it when people post a few thoughts and things into the chat window. It's a little evaluation exercise. Here's the question. Give one advantage and one risk for a developing country of increasing international trade. Let's take, for example, I don't know, a country like Zambia, or a country like Ethiopia or Ghana or Senegal or something. Let's say they try to increase the ratio of their trade to their GDP. So they're trying to increase the trade openness of the economy. Can you please write down one potential economic advantage of trade openness and one risk, one drawback, one downside for a developing country? So as the answers come in, I'll give a shout out. So let's first of all think about the advantages of trade. Let's do those first. An advantage of trade specifically, everybody, for a developing country or an emerging country, if you like, let's broaden it. So Marie says more jobs, but increased competition for local businesses. Tom Grogan says increased domestic growth, but a downside reliance on imports. As was said, advantage, more jobs, increase in formal employment. Some good answers coming through here. This is fantastic. Yeah, okay, advantage can increase exports to other countries if the currency is attractive. We're just focusing here on advantages initially, so there's some good answers coming through. Increased demand for exports, Kate says, leads to higher aggregate demand. Neela says countries can benefit from exploiting comparative advantage. KS makes a great point. The savings gap decreases as employment rises. Very interesting. If trade lifts per capita incomes, of course, people can afford to save more, and therefore the savings gap might go down. Some great answers there. Graded choice is a good point made. Rizzy says benefiting from the specialization, increased productivity and things like that. Let's have a look at the answers that we sort of jotted down before the session. And there's more than one answer. It's up to you really what you want to focus on. Keep in mind, if it says developing country, it's best to link to economic growth or economic development. Oftentimes, students think they're the same thing. They're not. Trade often leads to falling prices for consumers, particularly if there's more competition, more contestability. And of course, falling prices increases people's real incomes, which means they can now afford to spend more and save more. And a very important point, trade leads to increased employment in export sectors. You might want to bring in the idea here, for example, of the trade multiplier, that oftentimes it's not just the exporting business that creates employment, it's the export licensing, it's freight, it's logistics, it's export insurance, and many other examples as well. Can people just spend a few seconds typing in some drawbacks? I know they did. I know that Tom and I think Neela put in some good disadvantages as well. What about the downsides of trade openness going up for a developing country? Okay, so Neutral Prism 40 says disadvantage, footloose capitalism, leaving behind structural unemployment. Sounds to me like you are absolutely bang on this course. Rizzy says one risk could be a decrease in domestic demand as international goods are likely to be more price competitive. KS says a disadvantage, infant industries are pushed out of the market. Firms gain increased market share and monopoly power and prices might actually rise in the long run instead of fall. Great points. Seb McCormack says one disadvantage is that it can create primary product dependency, which can then create more price and income instability in the economy. Neela says the issue of cultural homogenization is important. Marie talks about tax avoidance as an related issue. Some seriously good answers here. Let's just check what we put down just as a little balancing thing. Here we go. Nice graphics, John. Thank you. Open trade may cause rising structural unemployment in some industries. Have some examples to mind. So if you open up your retail sector, some overseas retailers come in, that could create some structural unemployment, or your mining industries or your car making sectors. And I think a couple of points made some great points. A couple of people made some super points. Countries that specialize in primary commodities may suffer from the so-called natural resource trap or the natural resource curse. Over dependence on one import whose global price is volatile. Just before we move on, Neela coming with a late point, phenomenal point about the environmental consequences of trade, which are definitely worth considering as part of your evaluation. Fantastic answers. Kathy, over to you for the final
Oh,
exercise.
unbelievably good answers. I think the best I've ever seen, and I'm going to watch this back afterwards and write some of them down. Just brilliant, brilliant answers. Right, this is the last activity for me. This is the evalue wheel. So what you're going to get here is a line of argument that a student's made. And what we're going to ask you to do is to give an evaluative comment starting with one of the terms along the bottom. But you are going to be given this at random when we spin the wheel. So, John, could we have, first of all, our line of argument? So, domestic producers gain directly from a subsidy. Lower prices will bring greater international competitiveness, leading to increasing revenues and profits. Now, if we spin the wheel, please, John. Let's see what we want our evaluation to start with. Here it comes. Okay, so we want it to start with however. So on the screen it says what possible negative view can be given. I might say alternative view. So what evaluation could you add that links directly to this line of argument that we have on the screen? So do add it to the chat once you've got a few ideas. Now, again, when I did this with my students, they were coming up with all sorts of things that were quite sort of tangential, let's say. And I always think sometimes all you've got to do is state the obvious as long as it's relevant with lots of technical terms in it. So I can just see again some brilliant stuff that's shooting past me on the chat. So lots of people. Jeff, have you noticed any in particular?
Well, yeah, I'll keep an eye out. You pick out one. Tom Gogan says it can destroy external economies. China's dumping of steel, effectively using domestic subsidies to engage in dumping. KS says this leads to a distortion in comparative advantage.
Yeah.
Can lead to the subsidization of less efficient firms, leading to a fall in productivity and real output. Great point.
I don't know why I'm here, Jeff. The chat's so good.
Well,
Any
you pick
more?
one out, Kathy. Yeah, go on.
All right, I was just going to say they are just all good. So I mean I'm just very aware in this that students are at all sorts of different levels, and I can see somebody saying here it requires large government spending. So if you are a little bit unsure, you're very short of time, then actually, John, do you want to put our example up here first? But you know, it is evaluation to say, but of course there is an opportunity cost associated with the subsidy. That's very simple evaluation, but you can expand on that point. The other bit of evaluation we've got here is that your domestic firm, the minute you do this, may become overly dependent on subsidies rather than taking their own steps to become more competitive. And that would be the case as well if you were trying to protect with a tariff, if you're trying to protect an infant industry. This is the danger with this sort of thing.
Shout out, Kathy, to Archie Flinton, who says it makes the following point. However, subsidies can have large opportunity costs and can allow firms to survive even while being inefficient.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
The idea of zombie
Brilliant.
firms, the zombie companies is hinted at there.
So that's incorporating lots of ideas together, isn't it? Super good. We could talk some more and attempt to put off the evil hour of shot in the dark, but I can see John is wise to this tactic.
I am indeed. I just realised I can't see you both, so I'm just making sure you're on screen. Yes. Now, of course, this is the way that we always finish these economics A-level sessions with a quick question that neither Kathy nor Jeff have seen before. So we're going to pit their wits against the great students of economics out there, and boy, we know they're good. Tonight has been a phenomenal set of responses. We thought last week was good, but tonight has gone even that further
That's
step ahead.
every week, it really does.
So tonight's question is going to be a little bit different, actually, because normally there's like a numerical answer. I'm actually going to ask for a suggested answer. And of course, as always, those of you who are there out there on the internet, you can look it up on the internet. Please don't do that, though. Try and keep with the spirit of what this activity is meant to do, and have a go at an intelligent guess at a question that there is no particular reason why you would know the answer to it. Okay, so here we go. And before I show the question, I'm going to ask Kathy to give me the answer first.
No.
I am
That's
Kathy.
not
Yeah.
how it works.
No, it is. It is tonight. Okay, and actually, you'll see why it's an advantage in a second. So here we go. Right. So. Let me just make sure that that's coming up. Here we go. Right. So, Saudi Arabia is the seventh on the list of countries whose economy relies on the production and sale of oil. Oil rents, as it's called, the contribution of oil to the country's actual total output, makes up about 24% of Saudi Arabia's GDP. Can you name any of the other countries, so we've got six countries, who appear above Saudi Arabia in that list? Now, Kathy, does the question make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking for one of the six countries that you think might have a greater dependency on oil production. So we've been talking about this tonight, haven't we? Countries who start to rely particularly on one type of primary product and the danger it has for them going forward in the future. So countries that are relying on oil, they may have dangers with that, particularly as we know that people are going to stop using oil for environmental reasons going forward. We're getting some great answers coming in already. So maybe they've given you some clues.
I was going to say Russia.
You're going to say Russia. You're going to say Russia, right? That's an interesting one.
I'm slightly nervous.
Slightly nervous.
Gosh,
Okay,
I don't want it to be interesting. I want it to be right.
Well, we'll see in a second, won't we? Now, the Jeff. Any thoughts?
Quite a few of the answers have come in the chat window, and I did sneak a little glance there to see what
Yeah.
Tom Grogan said, because most people, the answers they gave is what Tom Grogan. But
Yes.
I'm going to go left field here, just
Okay.
because it's be contrary. I'm going to go Malaysia.
Malaysia. I'm writing that down, Jeff. Malaysia.
Maybe I'm getting is it palm oil or no? Okay, now I'll change my answer, John.
Okay.
I'll go for the Galapagos. No, I won't go for the Galapagos. I think probably UAE would be there, given that Johnson was there. I think in Saudi Arabia and UAE today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go UAE.
I'm just trying to see some of the answers on the question. So there've been loads going past. Miss Bud's gone with the USA. Sophia's gone with
Lots
Canada.
Of Venezuelans,
Yes, there's
Lots
the
of
Venezuela
Venezuelans.
there. Naila's gone with Jordan. Rufai, apologies if I've got your name pronounced incorrectly there. Kuwait. Ismail's gone with Libya. Question mark. Ismail, have a look at this. Libya is top of my list. And guess what? Neither Kathy nor Jeff's responses are there in the top. UAE are not far behind, by the way, Jeff. So they're just behind Saudi Arabia. So,
was I ahead of Kathy? That's the key thing.
Talking about 1 centimetre away from the answer on a map, you are much closer, Jeff. Absolutely right.
That's great contextual evidence for an exam, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
You look at those top two countries there, Libya and the Republic of Congo, and look at the proportion of their output which is dependent upon oil. And like I say, especially as we're going forward with countries trying to move away from dependency on non-renewable resources, and how much that's going to have an impact upon their potential economic performance in the not too distant future. Wonderful stuff from the people online. I did say I'd try and give some names out. So many, I'm going to miss people out, so forgive me. I've got Hassan, Mariam, Alfie, Corman, Eliza, Ishmael, Sammy, Naila, Sam, Will, Alfie, Jade, Seb, Sochi, Poppy, Azra, Archie, Thomas. If I've missed your name, I'm so sorry. I was doing so many different things at the same time, but absolutely wonderful answers tonight. Quick reminder, of course, that these slides are available to you if you download. So particularly thinking about that sort of free trade agreement, monetary union table that's Kathy was going before. If you've not seen that before, or some of those free trade areas before, have a look at those again. Take your time over those a little bit more. This is our last live stream for a few weeks. We're going to do a few over the Easter break in a couple of weeks' time. As you saw from our little advert at the beginning, most of us are away now doing this very thing live in cinemas around the country. So we're going to spend a whole day talking about economics and economics A-level and giving you access as well to our digital output. Anybody who comes along to the cinema also has that access as well. As always, thank you to those of you taking part with your questions. I can't keep going on about how good they are, and loads of you doing it. But massive thank you, of course, to both Kathy and Jeff for helping us put this together today, and also delivering that in such in their normal style, but absolutely wonderful. Thanks a lot then, everybody. We'll say goodnight, and we'll see you again at some time in the very near future.
Yeah,
Bye,
take care,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.